Right, good morning everybody. Welcome to the Economy and Development Select Committee. It's Thursday the 21st of October 2021. It's 10 o'clock. I would also like to welcome members from the Planning Committee who have an interest in one of the topics that we're going to discuss this morning. I have apologies for absence from Francis Taylor, Giles Howard and Matt Feekins. And Maureen Powell, Councillor Maureen Powell is standing in for Councillor Giles Howard. Do I have any declarations of interest in respect of any of the items on the agenda? Say now or forever hold your peace. No. Right. Nobody's requested to enter the public open forum, so we'll proceed to agenda item number 4. That's the employment and skills to scrutinise the progress of the employment skills and apprenticeship programmes. So I think that's going to be who's going to present that this morning. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair.
Yes.
This morning.
Yes.
Sorry to pause there.
Morning.
Good morning. Are you happy for me to share the presentation on the screen?
Absolutely.
Thank
Fire
you.
away. I'll switch my camera off so you can come on.
Okay. Oops. Sorry, hang on. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can all see that.
Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Jones, the Strategic Lead for Employment Skills at Monmouthshire County Council. So we're going to give you a brief update on our performance to date against our targets, our finance and resources, success stories and challenges. Oh, hang on, it's not. Brilliant. Okay, so the content is the purpose, project update, business engagement, some of our success stories, challenges, developments, and plan on a page. So with me this morning, Chair, is Gareth, our apprenticeship graduate and intern coordinator, Steve Cooper, our employment liaison officer. Unfortunately, Archie can't be with us today. He's on annual leave, and Will, our Kickstart administrator, is on the call as well. So they're going to feed into the presentation. Okay, to set the scene, we're the employment and skills team, and we support children, young people and adults to engage in education, training, employment, opportunities to gain new skills, retrain, upskill, and to achieve the right qualifications for future career aspirations. We support apprenticeships, graduate and intern opportunities in local authorities. We work with our most vulnerable residents, offering interventions and safe, prosperous and healthy lifestyles. And we engage with our local businesses and employees to look at innovative pathways to thrive and succeed. So this is our team structure. So over the past 12 months, we have grown, which has contributed to the needs with COVID for increased support for employment and skills, and with has been successful to be a gateway for Kickstart and Infuse, which is our innovative future services programme coming into our team. So I'm going to set the scene with our projects. So I'll talk you through, this is a new project which is transition from year 6 in primary to year 7 in secondary. We recognised a need back 2 years ago to offer support for our vulnerable pupils around needs-led, in terms of looking at how we can support them to make that transition from primary to secondary. So this project over the last 12 months has engaged with school clusters, part of the early help panel, and those are the figures for the number of pupils that we've supported through our secondary schools. So what's happening at the moment, the work has worked with pupils in year 6 and now is in touching having touch points with those pupils now in year 7. So Inspire to Achieve, you'll see from the screen that we support those at risk of becoming NEET, not in education, training, employment. I won't list the delivery team. Our outcomes are our engagement, so those numbers on the programme, those we support into education and training, those achieve qualifications, and those that we work with to reduce the risk of them becoming NEET, not in education, training, employment. So you see from the figures, the ones in brackets are the target, and then the actual next to it. So those that are red, we're showing we're slightly under target, and those are green showing we're performing over target. So this is Leeds led through a qualification. So we offer a level 2 BTEC in work skills and personal social development. We offer pastoral support, and it's all around improving attendance, attainment, young people's behaviour and well-being. And they see some of the courses in college that our young people that have gone on the programme. So this is our NEET figures we wanted to present. So as a local authority, we have relatively low NEET figures. So you see year 12, year 11, year 12 and year 13. The latest figures are for 2020, and you see there's been a significant increase in those in year 13. I think this is due to COVID, where people young people have thought perhaps they don't want to take a gap year, maybe not go to university due to circumstances. So it'll be interesting to see what those figures come up now for 2021. We're working closely with Schools and Careers Wales at the moment. It's the deadline for destinations into education, training and employment, which we log on the career system, and our system is 31st of October. So we're working closely with our schools at the moment to see what the figures are going to come in at. So this is the latest in employment stats. When I say latest though, we were originally going to present back in September to this committee. So I've got some more up-to-date figures, Chair, which I can share with you all. I can send them to Hazel as well if you would like them to be included in the minutes. So here you'll see the unemployment trend for Monmouthshire, where it peaked in September 2020, and you see then it slowly starting to, there was a peak again in the summer, and then it slowly started to go down. Not summer, sorry, in December. So we're looking at the moment, so the latest figures in September 2020, we're at 3.1% unemployment, which is 1,705 residents. Of that number of residents, the most unemployed, or the highest unemployed bracket, is the 18 to 24, which is 350. So, Chair, I can send you those latest figures with the minutes if you would like those.
Yeah, if you could send us those. But I understand that the UK, well, as of yesterday, the UK unemployment figures were in fact 4.6.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so the figures that I took previous slide, I think it was about 3.7. So it has gone down to 3.3, 3.2, 3.1, and we're now at 3.1. So it was at 3.1 for us in August as well. So we've seen back in March 2020, for us it was only 1.8. Are you happy for me to move on, Chair?
Yeah, fine, thank you, if you can move on.
Cool, thank you. So Inspire to Work, this is the project where we support young people who are NEET, not in education, training, employment, 16 to 24, and this is all around employment focus. So you'll see the team listed, the number engaged. We do have an outcome into education and training, and we have an outcome qualifications. The main focus is supporting young people into employment. So young people come to us where they want to have more work-related qualifications, first aid, food hygiene, could be CS card. We would support those young people achieving those qualifications, whether we deliver them in-house or we outsource them, and then looking at updating their CVs, supporting with job applications, maybe taking them to a taster session at college, work-based learning provider, and you'll see from the slides the employment sectors our young people have gone into and the courses that they have engaged in. Okay, so the next slide is Community to Work Plus. This is our employment programme, which is target age 16 plus, but it's mainly for adults. So those who are underemployed or on 0 hours contracts, those who are furthest away from the labour market, and those are in or on the edge of poverty. So you'll see the team listed, you'll see the number enrolled on the programme, you'll see the number who have achieved job outcomes. We've had a number of people come to us for support for self-employment. So this could be for purchasing equipment, and we work closely with Business Wales on supporting those people setting up their own businesses. It's a very needs-led centred approach. We offer face-to-face or e-learning training and around job search, CVs, interviews. So the sectors that our clients have gone into: retail, hospitality, care, construction, security, self-employment, as I said earlier, logistics and cleaning. Skills at work. So this is the project where we work with people who are already in work and they want to upskill. So they want to gain a level 2 qualification or a level 1 qualification, and we hope and anticipate then that will improve their employment opportunities, better pay. So you'll see the figures for enrolments and qualifications. We've delivered to quite recently, I think it was first aid in a hospitality sector, food hygiene. So we would directly deliver these courses or outsource them. And it's all about upskilling, retraining, and ensuring that our residents have those best opportunities for better paid employment. Campus, this is our youth homelessness project. We've been running this now for 2 years. It's funded by Welsh Government. Each local authority has this fund to support people at risk of becoming homeless. So we work closely with Ian Bakewell's team, the voluntary sector. So it's all about prevention. So is working with people to make sure that they maintain a stable and safe home environment, and sustain their independence and their well-being. You'll see some figures there. So we're in our secondary schools, working with pupils being identified through schools that need that additional support, and you'll see the partners we're working with there as well, and that's working really well at the moment. Right, I'm going to hand you over to Gareth now, and he's going to talk about Kickstart and his work.
Morning, everyone. So at the last meeting, we presented what the AGI was and some of the aims and outcomes for the strategy. So the aim of the strategy was obviously to strengthen existing workforce and shape our future workforce. So some of the things that we've done under the AGI strategy, we've had approval for the guaranteed interviews for care leavers. We had an uplift in pay for all our apprentices. So this has meant where previously they would have been on like £4.15 an hour. They're now on £9.50 an hour. What this has also meant is that we've got a wider pool to fish from for apprentices, because where apprentices used to be predominantly 16 to 24-year-olds, we're now looking at working age candidates who previously may have overlooked an apprenticeship because of the rates in pay. So where we had the uplift in pay now, it means that people with households, utilities and other things can start to consider apprenticeships. So under the strategy, we've currently got 13 apprentices within Monmouthshire. We've got 2 undergoing safe recruitment checks at the moment, so that'll take us to 15. And as a comparison, our neighbouring authorities have got 15 apprentices. There's an authority with 2 apprentices, and then we've got 1 with 10. So we're looking quite healthy in terms of apprentices, although we could probably do a little better. We're looking at degree apprentices, so I've had conversations with chief officers looking at how we can deliver degree apprenticeships. Obviously, a lot of work going on with Infuse at the minute, so we're looking at future skills or skills for the future. So again, it's something we're looking to address. So it's looking at frameworks, looking at what qualifications we need to be considering for the skills of tomorrow. So there's work going on there. We were successful with our bid to Kickstart. So Kickstart is a UK government initiative, and that's looking at supporting young people 16 to 24, long-term unemployed and fully funded opportunities. Since we implemented Kickstart, we've created 111 posts across Monmouthshire. That's both internal and external. We've had a number of setbacks, namely COVID, because employers were unable. In the beginning, there were some employers who created opportunities for young people to come in, but with the onset of COVID, then they were unable to safely put measures in place to support opportunities. So we've had some dropping in and dropping out. But for those young people who've gone into employment through Kickstart, it's obviously been a success for them. It just means that they'll have 6-month work opportunity, they'll have transferable skills, and then they'll obviously have that opportunity to progress into a substantive post within an organisation. At the minute, we've currently got 13 internal opportunities still open through Kickstart, and they through our schools, but mostly at the moment through our schools. But we're looking to increase that, the offer that we've got. We've had an extension on Kickstart to take us through to March 22, and then the final placement will end in September 22. We've got 21 external opportunities still currently open, so we're working hard with job centres to ensure that they're matching young people against the opportunities we've got. It has been difficult. The programme isn't a mandatory programme, so where we've got these opportunities, it's not like job centre can just make young people take these opportunities. We have to want the young person to take these opportunities. So, and that's what it's trying to increase the range of offers that we've got, to make sure we've got a wide range of opportunities for young people to be more appealable for them. And right, graduates. So under the AGI strategy as well, we've started working closely with, it would have been the graduates or the CCR graduate scheme, which has now been rebranded as Venture Graduate. So we've currently got 2 graduates within MCC, within comms and digital. And also we've got 1 graduate, yet it will be starting in January. So that's a shared graduate, and it's a collaboration between us and the United Bevan Health Board. And at the minute, so the opportunities have been advertised. They'll work on a decarbonisation agenda and sit within Matt Gatehouse's team for the first year. Second year, then they will move across to the United Bevan Health Board. And yeah, that's it. So there's still lots of work ongoing. Like I said, we just trying to increase the range of offers we've got. And I know we've got 15 within our workforce, which at the minute is probably less than 5 per 1,000 of our workforce, but it's something we're looking to improve upon, and just make sure that we've got the future skills for tomorrow.
Thanks, Gareth.
Thanks, Gareth. Can I just ask a question about this? If we can go back one screen.
Oops.
Yeah. No. You've got the figures. I can't see it on the screen at the moment, but you mentioned that there were 15 or 16 graduates, or 16 apprentices in MCC. Yeah. But later on the screen, it shows that we've got, we've got currently 19 apprentices across MCC. And then a bit lower down, we've got circa 168 existing staff undertaking apprenticeships.
Sorry,
can you just explain the difference between those figures? Thanks.
Obviously, we used to consider apprentices as someone who would have been 16 to 24 as a new person into the organisation. So where I mentioned there, we've got circa 168. This is existing staff now that are looking to upskill. So anybody that's undertaking a level 2, 3, 4 qualification or an NVQ, they are considered apprentices as well. So this figure there of 168, that's existing staff in the organisation who are undertaking qualifications, and this is a range of like business administration, advice and guidance, project management. So that's that figure there.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, apologies, I didn't mention that.
So Hannah, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, for some reason I can't get back on the slideshow. Is everyone okay with it like this on the screen?
We can still see it, yeah.
Yeah. For some reason. Okay. So Infuse, as Gareth spoke about, is our innovative future services program. This is a European funding program. So there's the team. Cohort Alpha was the first cohort where we had 19 people on the program across the 10 local authorities of the Cardiff capital region. The cohort 1 started last week and we forecast 50 participants, and we had 33 join last week, so it's working really well, really successful. It's around changing how we work in public sector, providing us with the tools, methods and research for adapting to continue to change, looking at solutions to problems, so some of the challenges around decarbonisation, home energy efficiency, opportunities for energy using dog poo, and maximising supply chains through procurement. Right, can I hand you over to Steve? Steve, do you want to talk to the slides a minute?
Okay, morning all. My name's Steve Cooper. I'm the Employment Liaison Officer for the team, and basically the basic premise of my role is that I work closely with businesses to create opportunities for our clients. I also need to understand and respond to the current labour market demands. So I'm working at the moment with a firm called Monex to try and address the HGV shortage. I'm also working across county with my equivalent, the ELOs from Torvine, Blaenau Gwent, Caerphilly. We're also working on the construction side of things. There's a shortage in construction, so the Cardiff ELO is leading on that, and we are supporting him to basically provide clients in the county with the opportunity to take up training and placements within the construction industry. Also mobilise the needs of our clients and businesses across Gwent. Like I said, liaising with other ELOs. At present, I'm developing a program called Evolutive, which is a business database. At present, we've got no mechanism to reach out to businesses, and COVID sort of created that opportunity. When we first went into lockdown, we tried to reach out to businesses to see if we could support them and what support they needed, which was very difficult because it was just a simple case of using Google and sort of speaking to them, trying to get a phone number. A lot of businesses had ceased trading or had moved out of the area, so we're now developing a database that will do that for us with just a simple email. And any events, we've got a jobs fair pending, which is going to be on the 8th of November. So to reach out to businesses and get them to support that would be a lot easier. I've recently started job matching. I've been working with an agency in London who have a contract to develop the Wilkinsons in Mega. So I created a vacancy, went on our social media, put it out to our residents. We selected a few residents from that to put them forward for the CITB and CSCS training course. Once they'd passed that, we provided them with PPE, that's the hard hat, the high vis and the safety boots, and then put them in place. I think we had 6 in total that went there and are on 6-month contract, and are really well paid. There's a 17-year-old down there that's doing all the hours he can, and he's earning between £500 and £600 a week. So the incentive is there. I'm actively involved in local business forums. I've started to attend the Chamber of Commerce events. I went to one last week, a networking event at the Bridges Centre in Monmouth. And the feedback I'm getting from that is they're very pleased to have somebody from the council there that is in a slightly different role. Is there more of a supportive role than somebody that they can go to and sort of complain about potholes in the road, etc. To date, I've worked with Wilkinsons who had redundancies, so we went in and supported staff to make that easier. When Caldicott, the Waitrose in Caldicott closed, we went in there and did some face-to-face work, some Teams work with their staff to support them. I worked with Northern Automotive. I did a couple of sessions with staff there around employability, CV writing and getting them back into work. I've worked closely with employers. I've created vacancies for Kickstart with some I2W clients that I'd been unemployed for a while, and through just doing a bit of work experience, we're offered full-time roles. I'm also working alongside Prescoid Prison at the moment. They're looking at becoming a community interest company. The prison's got a fully working farm, so we're looking at bringing their produce. They produce thousands of gallons of milk per month, and they grow a lot of veg on site. So we're looking at sort of bringing that into the food chain to provide the schools and colleges with that. They're also looking at training provisions there. So they're doing forklift training, driver training. So I'm looking at bringing a few of our clients across to use that facility. I'm also looking to work with colleague Gwent. They are developing a site around the Clink model in Cardiff, where they're going to have a restaurant. So that needs to be built. So we're going to provide staff to help build that, the security guards to guard it, and then hopefully some of our clients from I2A and I2W will go across and be chefs there, because they're moving all their catering facilities from Ystrad. So that's quite new in the planning, but hopefully by sort of this time next year, they'll have something in place. It'll be a fully fledged licensed restaurant, which I think is quite exciting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Can we move on now? Because I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
Steve.
Thank you.
Archie's not with us, so I'm going to introduce Will next. Will, can you tell us a bit about your journey on Kickstart with us?
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Will, and I'm the Kickstart apprentice here at Monmouthshire County Council. And my role is part of the administration team, helping to really coordinate some of the Kickstart schemes going forward around the area. Now, initially, I knew a little bit about what the county council did in terms of their impact on the local community, but I think as I really learned a lot more about the scope of projects they have in schools, really, and with a lot of young people, I think that really got me a lot more excited to get involved and really be a bigger part of what they do. So having been part of the administration team at the council, I think it's safe to say that my organisational skills have really benefited heavily from it, from really just keeping tabs on the Kickstart email inbox, communicating with employers, and just keeping on top of the whole paperwork really to get the schemes up and running. I think on top of that as well, I really enjoyed the sort of responsibility that I've been given to help coordinate on not just Kickstart, but a lot of other projects that the County Council runs. So as Hannah talked about Compass earlier on, I'm also helping to compile and analyse data that they've collected from the last 2 years and use that for presentations going forward. And also, as I said, my sense of presentation skills have benefited from that as well going forwards. Being able to visually represent all this data into one big project is quite exciting. And so in terms of what I hope to gain from this project and take it forward into the future, I'd like to really continue my apprenticeship going forward, if possible, and hopefully in the long run, in the years coming, maybe pursue a career in finance, ideally. One key way in which the County Council have helped me to really pursue this dream is by helping me get set up in conjunction with the Skills at Work team to help pursue a remote learning course in my own time. And in the recent weeks, I've actually completed this course and passed it. So with a bit of help, I'm hoping to pursue a new course actually going forward, just to build to that next level and really give myself the grounding I need going forwards in the future. So that's all part of this whole learning process, which I find really the greatest takeaway from my Kickstart placement, really, which I'm very grateful for.
Brilliant, thank you, Will. Okay, looking at some of our successes, for us as a team is the continued blended support we offer across our projects. We've increased our face-to-face work, the work-related courses we have on offer to our clients, the increase in the number of people going back into work now over the last 6 months, the local employers matching those clients to local job opportunities. We've touched on our success through Kickstart, our pop-ups we did through the summer months when things started to open back up to increase our community engagement and referrals. Infuse started with us in May, and we talked earlier about the first cohort and how we're going to look at some real world challenges. And personally for me is working closely with our 10 local authorities as part of the Cardiff Capital region in developing future skills and employability model. So I think this slide is probably where we reflected as a team where our challenges are going forward. And I do apologise if it is quite small. You will have it in your pack. So the challenges for us is around participant engagement. We rely on traditional referral routes to job centres and partners, and there are other organisations out there providing similar support to us. So it can be sometimes a challenge. We're looking to develop alternative referral pathways, so we're looking to have more of a reach on social media. We're looking to redevelop our website and to increase our community-based outreach. So we want to be closer, we want to be where our clients are, so we can have that face-to-face engagement. Another challenge is our business engagement, which Steve touched upon. We have good engagement with our businesses, but we need that one-stop shop where we can have those conversations, we can interface and we can connect. So this is where we're looking to purchase Evolutive. We've had conversations with our neighbouring authorities. We've put a business case forward to SRS, and for that will help us to strengthen our relationships with our local businesses and look at those identified skills gaps and needs and where we can work together in meeting the local skills needs. Sustainability of funding. This is a huge challenge for us, as you probably aware. We're coming to an end of our European Social Fund for Skills at Work, Inspired to Achieve and Inspired to Work in December 2022, which is approximately a net budget of 350k per year. We have annual grants alongside that, so Community to Work Plus, we have an annual grant from Welsh Government, and we have the annual Youth Support Grant, which supports campus and the work we do around the NEET agenda. So it is a real challenge for us at the moment in looking at how we go forward, looking at what the resource implication is and how we're exploring future funding opportunities. So we've got a bid on the table at the moment, which Torvine are leading on in the Community Renewal Fund, which we were hoping to hear from by now, but we're still waiting on that. And we will be taken forward to Cabinet in December the principle of regional working. We've worked a paper around 10 local authorities on looking at how we can work together as a region, but provide local need. Loss of expertise and specialist knowledge. So it's uncertainty for staff around the programmes, fixed term contracts, project renewals. It's around us equipping staff with transferable skills and qualifications, and I'm so impressed with the team. They love to learn, they love to thrive, they love to gain that professional development, and Will's demonstrated that in his brief discussion with you earlier. So supporting staff to pursue their career ambitions, and we feel that is really important in their future career pathway. Around employing local young people for local jobs. We're really passionate about this, and I'm so pleased that we have 2 young people in our team that live and work in Monmouthshire, creating more opportunities for local authority for apprenticeship graduates and interns, which Gareth touched upon, and future economy, understanding the future skills needs within Monmouthshire, responding to those needs, and also transport networks and decarb agenda. Our future development, to tap on quickly, we're all about early intervention and prevention at the earliest possible point, about delivering flexibility as support, supporting current workforce in restart or reskill following unemployment. We're all about, as I said earlier, about lifelong learning, growing our digital advanced engineering and green skills base, supported through the foundation economy, driving opportunities for young people to train, work and live in the county. I touched on future skills needs earlier, and the digital agenda and regional national collaboration. So in your pack is the plan on the page that we've come up with. I won't go into that in any detail. And finally, any questions? I do apologise if it was longer than anticipated.
Yes, if I could start off with a couple of questions. I mean, quite clearly, the elephant in the room here is funding. You know, with these projects that you've outlined, there is about 2.2 million coming from the European Social Fund. About 1.1 million of that is involved in the Infuse scheme, which largely involves existing members of Monmouthshire County Council. But so far as the other schemes are concerned, Inspire to Achieve, Inspire to Work, etc., you know, there's another £1 million that's expended on those schemes. Can you tell us some more about where you're expecting to achieve funds to cover that shortfall?
Thank you, Chair. So as I said earlier, we are working closely with our 10 local authorities in developing a co-design collaborative model for future employment and skills. And I think this will give us more flexibility, more value-based cost effectiveness, and this is what we want to take forward as a model. So this week there is workshops, there's one this afternoon, and we're going to look at what the model looks like. But picking on your point, there is a concern around the finances. It is a concern in terms of the impact in terms of NEET agenda and employment, and I suppose a concern because we've got a good sound based staff that we want to retain within the local authority. So we're looking at a local solution, and we're looking at a regional solution. We will be working up more detailed proposals, and we're looking to take to cabinet. It's just unfortunate we haven't heard about the Community Renewal Fund. It is, as you say, a big financial implication to the local authority, which we want to reduce to a much smaller impact as a financial implication. I hope that answers your question, Chair.
Not really, because whose budget is this going to count? We're looking for £1 million.
I'm not looking for £1 million. I'm not looking for £1 million.
Well, there's 328,000 in Inspire to Achieve, 248,000 Inspire to Work, another 150, another 140, another 135, another 150. So it's headed up that way. So is this going to be coming, do you think, from Welsh Government, and how much do you think Monmouthshire County Council is going to be able to dip into this pot?
So in terms of, we have a core budget of 199. We have additional grants from Welsh Government, which is Community to Work Plus and the Youth Support Grant. So for an annual basis, a net cost, you know, the cost of the grant income is 327, and the net cost to Monmouthshire is 187.
Mm-hmm. But if no European social fund money is coming in, you're going to be looking for a very significant increase from Monmouthshire County Council into in order to keep these schemes alive. Is that not the case?
We are looking to succession and to successive programmes, but unfortunately we're still waiting for details from UK and Welsh Government.
Mm.
And the clock is ticking.
Mm. Okay, fine, thank you. Let's see if anybody else has questions at this stage. Richard Roden.
Thank you, Chair. Super presentation, Hannah and associates. It was very interesting. Glad to see the kind of results and approaches that you're taking. Following on from Paul's line of questioning, I noticed that in item 3.2, next steps, you talk about a Torfaen County Borough Council leading on an employability paper for the 10 local authorities in the Cardiff Capital region. How do we actually make our voice heard? We're a rural council, which is a bit of an outlier compared with the others. How do we get our voice across to make sure that our county's needs are taken care of? Secondly, in terms of the slides, key stage 2, inspire to achieve, supported children, you've got 10 in Chepstow, 36 in Monmouth, 42 in Caldicot and 43 in Abergavenny. Chepstow numbers look a bit low. I wonder if that could be explained. And finally, Steve's talk about Monex and HGV shortage. I wonder if I could have a little bit more information about that, because it's a subject of interest. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So picking up on your first point in terms of the report in 3.2.2, the current programmes we are part, so Inspire to Achieve, Inspire to Work and Skills at Work, we are Newport as our lead authority, and when we were developing the model for Monmouthshire, our voices were heard. It was around the needs for each local authority. Yes, we are a rural authority, and this was all taken into consideration. I think going forward in becoming a 10 authority approach, we've been meeting now for, I would say, 18 months as 10 local authorities. We've developed the model, we've looked at our local intelligence, and going forward, we think we're in a stronger position to reduce risk. The conversations we're having, there are bigger contractors coming into the local authority, working pan UK, pan Wales, and we want to be in that space going forward. So we feel as a 10 local authorities approach to employability and skills, with that local delivery plan sitting behind it, which needs to be flexible and adaptable to the needs of our county. Picking up on your second point in terms of those figures, so we have a data system where we rag young people in terms of attendance, behaviour and well-being. So we do that at Key Stage 2 now. So the data, and it is one of the criteria, identifies those young people that needs the most support, and then the worker will have the professional discussion with the primary school. So as you say, figures may be slightly lower for Chepstow, doesn't mean to say that, you know, everything has been taken into consideration to support those young people stepping up from primary into secondary. Those discussions go on at school cluster. I can go back and check, and if you feel that we can do some more, we can look into that in terms of the figures sitting behind Chepstow. I'm more than happy to do that. Steve, can I bring you in then on the discussion point on the HGV licence?
Yeah, of course. We met with Torfaen yesterday at a jobs fair, and they are looking, they funded a few of their clients through the process. It is very expensive. You're talking something around about £1,700 per client. That's the test. You have to do a competency related exam at the back of that as well. And then you've got to pay for the license. So we're looking, myself, like I said in the presentation, the ELOs from the various councils around us, to see if we can go to Welsh Government and seek further funding for that. So if we can eat into that £1,700 a little bit more, and then if we got clients that have come forward that are already with sort of Mellon and MHA, perhaps we can spread the cost of that. At the minute, it's very much in the planning stage, and it, you know, we've identified a need, and we're just trying to. So I'm not saying we're going to be successful, but we've identified a need, and I think if we go about it correctly and we make that a plan, hopefully we'll be successful and we can address the need. Because this, well, I think I spoke with Monex last week, and I think countrywide on a daily basis there's 20,000 routes that need covering. That's how short we are. So, you know, we can blame Brexit. We can. There's other factors at play. But that is, something that we're working on. It's a work in progress, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you very much, both. Cheers.
Thanks. If I can call in Alan Davis, he's got a question now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I think you're doing absolutely excellent work, and in fact, I wasn't aware how much work you were doing, and I think it's you're to be commended for the amount of work you do. I mean, the Chair stole my thunder a little bit on the first item that I wrote down, and obviously we would all like to see these things expanded, not reduced, and that's where the funding issue, I think, is critical, isn't it? So I mean, I had written down, well, what's the contingency plan for that? But obviously you've explained that you were looking for funding elsewhere. I think there's a very appropriate role for the Welsh Government here in ensuring that these sort of schemes on a regional basis continue. So I wish you well in finding more funding.
Thank you. I think my Kath would like to come in a minute. Kath Fallon, is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, fine. Kath, come in.
Thank you all. Sorry to butt in, Alan. I promise I'll be very quick. It was just really a point of clarification. It is really in terms of the successor funding. Clearly, Hannah and the team are working regionally, and actually, us as colleagues, and certainly Francis as our Chief Officer, is working at a national level to identify alternative funding streams once European funding comes to an end. This isn't an issue that's purely relevant, sort of pertinent to Monmouthshire. It's actually right across the UK at the minute. We have teams and all local authorities facing the same issues, really. So we're working on that on a sort of daily basis. So we will come back to you with an update as we progress. It was just really a point of clarification around Infuse as well. Although Infuse sits as part of this portfolio, there is no direct match funding from the authority that goes into Infuse. We are the lead body. The way that we support the programme is through what they term as match funding in kind, so officer time to support it. So whilst it sits as quite a big chunk of the programme, it's actually running, I would say, a little bit outside the delivery of what our employment and skills team are doing. So I just wanted to explain that, because it's quite a big funded programme, but that's because we're managing it on behalf of the region, but it doesn't affect our core budget as such. So if that helps, thank you. I'll step out now. Sorry, Councillor Davis, I apologise. Thank you.
I never mind being interrupted by you, Kath.
Thank you very much. It's very kind. Thank you.
My next point was on 3.2.2 on the paper. You talked about this employability paper that's being on a regional base. I think Torvine in the lead-in, is that what you said? And there's a comment on the bottom that it's awaiting the final version to be submitted to Cabinet. Can you give us some idea of what sort of timescale we're talking about there?
Of course. So we're looking for a date to go to Cabinet now in December, Councillor. So we're currently working up the paper. The paper has been agreed by the Cardiff Capital Region Strategic Board. So we will look to take it to DMT, SLT, and then to Cabinet. So we're looking. So yeah, it will be in the next. We're working all the. I suppose, as we talked about earlier, we're working the Monmouthshire take on it. So it will be going to Cabinet in December. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And the other one was, there's a question about this evolutive model that you're talking about. It's quotes on 6.3 saying the team currently has limited resources and infrastructure for engaging and communicating with businesses, and you're looking to subscribe to that system. Well, as Kath will tell you, I'm very much, as far as the future is concerned, we need to match skills to what businesses actually require rather than what we think they require. Yeah. And I've written in big capital letters with 2 big asterisks, this is essential. So perhaps you can update us on what's happening there and what the time scale is for introducing that system. Because if we can't talk to the businesses, and communicate properly, then there's an issue about are we actually training for the right things? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. So we've met with neighbouring local authorities to look at the system. They've given us some intelligence, how it works, and looking at what you can input into the system. We've then met with SRS to look at a business plan, because we look then if is there a better system out there than Evolutive. So that piece of work has been done. We've worked up a paper to go to Enterprise DMT. So we're waiting for the sign off from SRS, which we're hoping the next 2 weeks. The paper will go to Enterprise DMT, and then we'll engage back with the Evolutive company to start setting it up. So I'm hoping this side of Christmas we'll start then setting up the system. And then we're hoping then over January, February, March, it will then be uploading and things will be going live then. So when we said we've got a limited, we have face-to-face contact with our businesses, we interface over emails, but this will give us, as you said, that skills intelligence that we'll be able to look at trends, we'll be able to look at, there'll be, how to put the bigger landscape for Monmouthshire. I'm quite excited about it. I'm not an IT techie. I have been involved in some of the discussions, but the feedback from other local authorities is it's been invaluable during COVID for them and getting information out and connecting. So we're really excited about it, and hopefully we can come back when perhaps April time, and we can explain it in more detail and give you a presentation.
Yes, thank you. That was my next question, actually. Can you come back to this committee and tell us how you're progressing? Because that, to me, there's two elements here. The funding is obviously one, and the other one is this system where we're actually talking to businesses and training for the skills that they require. The other point I'd make is that these schemes are so useful for young people in terms of actually getting the experience of a different environment and work. Because some years ago, my son did a work experience, actually did it on my plant, and criticised the amount of dust that was coming out of the stack, actually. So I was a bit put off by that. But even though he didn't work within that industry, the experience that he had, working with people and getting that sort of experience of working in a team was absolutely vital, I think, when he went on to university and did other things. So it's critical, I think, that young people get some experience of what it actually means to be part of a team and work.
Thank you. So we have put a proposal in for a Kickstart placement to support Evolutive as part of the team as well. As you know, you've talked about having young people have that experience, and I'm sure there's lots of young people out there with valuable IT experience that would jump at that opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. Richard, have your hand is still up. Is that a new hand or an old hand?
I've just requested it to be taken down, Chair.
Right.
I can't do it myself. Thanks.
Right. Okay. Members, do we have any more questions at the moment? No. So, I mean, clearly, Hannah, what you're doing, it's an excellent number of projects here, but clearly what we need is some cash to ensure that it continues beyond the end of the financial year. And I think it's quite clear that such a substantial funding isn't just going to come from Monmouthshire County Council. It's quite clear that this is something that Welsh Government are going to have to take up and run with. And all the authorities really should be banging on the door of Welsh Government to get this cash up and running, so that you know where all this team are going to be in 12 months' time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Well, thanks for that presentation. I think we'll then move on to the next agenda item, if that's okay with you, Hannah? Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thanks. Well, we're now proceeding with the next agenda item. That's the Monmouthshire Local Development Plan Annual Monitoring Report, and that's Mark Hand or Craig O'Connor's going to deal with that now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Craig.
Welcome, members. I've got my colleague, just for people at home, Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning here at Monmouthshire County Council. I've got my colleagues Rachel Lewis, who heads up the Strategic Planning Team, Planning Policy Team, just to run through a quick presentation on the annual monitoring report for the existing local development plan, which is due to be submitted to Welsh Government by the end of the month. So Rachel's going to run through a few slides. We've tried to keep it as brief as possible for you members to allow time for any queries and questions. So Rachel, if you'd like to share the PowerPoint presentation, please.
Members will be with. Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Members will be aware that works commenced on the preparation of the replacement plan for the period 2018 to 2033. However, there's still a statutory requirement to produce an AMR, so that's the annual monitoring report for the adopted LDP. The key purpose of the AMR is to monitor the effectiveness of the adopted plan, so whether the strategy and objectives are being achieved and whether the plan's policies are functioning effectively. Importantly, it will also help to inform and shape the replacement plan by looking at what's worked, what's working and what's not. So this 7th AMR covers the period 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. So in terms of key findings, many of the indicated targets and monitoring outcomes have been achieved, indicating that the plan's policies are performing as intended. So these are rated as green throughout the report. It's also worth noting there's been a slight increase in red ratings compared to the last AMR. So there's 3 this time compared to 1 last time. And this is due to the increase in vacancy rates in the central shopping areas of Abergavenny and Monmouth for 2 consecutive years, so that target's been hit. So in terms of the green ratings, the main ones are we've had 419 dwelling completions, including 71 affordable homes. Completions recorded over the past 3 monitoring periods have been significantly higher than those achieved in the early years of the plan period, which reflects the progression of the strategic sites in recent years, because there has been a lag with those coming forward. Reflecting that, 6 of the 7 allocated sites have planning permission, of which 4 are under construction. That's Dairy Farm in Abergavenny, Fairfield maybe in Chepstow, Brockfield Farm in Undy, and Sudbrook Paper Mill in Sudbrook. And 1 site is complete, and that's Wonister Road at Monmouth. The application for the 7th allocated site at Vinegar Hill is also under consideration. Progress has also been made with rural secondary site at Esk and 2 main village sites during the monitoring period, so that's at Shire Newton and Anishan. In terms of employment, we have a quite significant employment land bank available, 40.16 hectares. That's enough for the annual take-up rate, which is generally about 1.9 hectares per annum. Employment permissions are granted for a range of B-use class employment uses. There's also been a number of rural diversification and enterprise schemes approved, and 14 tourism accommodation schemes approved throughout the county. Vacancy rates in the central shopping areas of Mega and Esk have decreased, so Mega's now at 0 vacancy and Esk at 9.8, and Raglan's remain constant at 9%. Of note, in all of the central shopping areas, with the exception of Monmouth, all the vacancy rates were broadly in line with or below the GB High Street vacancy rate of 13.7%. And all of them, in fact, below the Welsh average, which stands at 19%. Just as a bit of context, and conversely to those good news stories, 4 centres recorded a rise in vacancy rates. And they were all the main towns, so Abergavenny, Caldicot, Chepstow and Monmouth. Also, no applications are granted contrary to Town 15 in flood zone C1 or C2 over the monitoring period. So I'll just pass over to Craig to talk about the amber and the red ratings in the current AMR.
Thank you, Rachel. Just to pick up on that point with regards to TAM 15, it's worth noting to members that a new planning policy's just been released at the end of September, which is more precautionary in terms of allowing development within floodplains, which is now taken to climate change. So it's worth taking that in consideration. That will be looked at next year, in next year's AMR, in terms of those developments, but certainly moving away from building anything on floodplains. And as this AMR shows, we haven't done that in the last year. So in terms of amber ratings within the existing monitoring period, the main one is 86 dwellings were permitted during the monitoring period, which is notably lower than other previous years, which was 1,238 in 2017-18, 598 in 2018-19, and 251 in 2019-2020. Now, this is reflective of the year that we had last year. Obviously, as we're all aware, the pandemic did hit, and there were issues in regards to dwellings that were being permitted in terms of the impact on resources at a local level, and obviously nationally as well. But one of the other significant issues for us as Monmouthshire, in terms of where we are with our plan period, it is the lack of sites that we have coming forward now. 6 of the 7 of our strategic sites within the LDP have got planning permission and are well underway, and we don't have those sites anymore. So that this plan period ends this year, December 2021. And as members know, we are currently reviewing and progression with the replacement local development plan. But obviously we need land and allocations to bring these sites forwards and to deliver these dwellings and homes on the ground. In addition, there's in this monitoring period in the beginning of this year, there was introduction of new measures for water quality from Natural Resources Wales in relation to the River Usk and River Wye, which has reduced the ability to approve and allow developments which have the potential to have an impact on that water quality in regards to phosphate levels. So that has resulted in a reduction in the amount of consents that we're able to issue. In terms of affordable housing completions recorded since the plan's adoption, this is also an amber rating. 495 homes, remains below the required delivery target of 672 homes over the same period. Over the plan period, the target for affordable housing is 960, and to date we have delivered 658. So there's a shortfall of 302, but given the lifetime of the plan period, some of those sites coming forward, if you look at the projections for the next 5 years, we'll hopefully hit those additional units as we move forward. Rachel, can you just move the slide on, please? So they're the amber ratings. In terms of the red ratings within the plan, as Rachel has outlined, the vacancy rates are where the 2 reds ratings have come up in terms of performance indicators. They have come up in terms of increasing that vacancy rate over the 2-year period. So in Abergavenny, it's raised to 7.6, and in Monmouth, 15.4. But obviously, as we're all aware, our town centres and the retail industry is changing significantly since the impact of the pandemic. People are using delivery services a lot more and aren't using those town centres, and there needs to be a re-imaging of those town centres moving forward, which we are working with Welsh Government on in terms of allowing more flexible spaces, more different types of uses in our town centres to allow that footfall to come in. But if you look at it compared to the national level, in terms of the Welsh Retail Consortium, their recent figures in Q2 of 2001 show there's 19.5% of vacancy rates across Wales. So if you compare it against that, I think Monmouthshire is doing really well, really, in terms of that shop local aspect, but it is showing up as a red because of that consecutive vacancy rate increasing. In terms of the other red factor is the undelivery of 1,500 dwelling completions over the plan period. I will move on in a minute to show you the trajectory and to show you the figures in terms of where we are, but there is a lag in terms of these sites coming forward. So as I've said, there's 6 of the 7 strategic sites in Monmouthshire have got planning consent. And as you can imagine, there is a bit of a lag in terms of those sites coming forward and those dwellings being constructed. Rachel, if you can go to the next slide, please, we can talk through the figures. So these tables show the average annual requirement and also the cumulative average annual requirement. So there's 2 different sets of figures. If you look at the green figures, this puts the target for over the LTP is 4,500 homes from 2011 until 2021. So the top figure shows what we've achieved against 450 per month. And then the bottom figures show the cumulative impact, so 450, 900, and as we move through the plan period to 4,500. As you can see on that bottom figure, the percentage difference, you can see at the start of the plan period, there's quite a significant deficit of 43.6%, but that is increasing and getting better as we move through the plan period. So as those planning consents do start and those developments do start, we are seeing those completions come through and those sites moving forward and those homes being delivered on the ground for people. So this year, in this mountain interim period, we delivered 419 completions against a target of 450, and overall then, so it shows a red rating because we haven't hit that, we're still short of 1,500. Rachel, if you go to the next screen, we can show members the trajectory. So this shows the trajectory and the cumulative average annual requirements over the plan period. So if you look at the grey there, the percentage difference in terms of achieving the target, you can see how that is increasing since 2014-50, since the plan was adopted in 2014. So you can see that increase over time whilst those completions are coming forward. And the other aspect I wanted to say that with that in terms of those sites coming forward is that over the next 5 years, there will be deliveries with the completions on site at the moment. There'll be over the next sort of 5 years, there'll be 474 from the Joint Housing Local Survey with the house builders in 2021, 551 in 2022. And it'll increase. So we should be in the next 5 years catching up on those deliveries, which will, at the moment, begin to house developments in terms of the construction rates and build-out programmes, lead to 2,285 homes being complete over those additional 5 years with the consents in place at the moment. So you can see there the impact of the LDP and delivering homes on the ground. So in terms of moving forward, we can continue to work on the review of the existing LDP and move forward with the replacement local development plan. We need to continue to work with industry in terms of Welsh Government, Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Water to find solutions to the phosphate issue and to ensure water quality is retained within the River Usk and River Wye. We're going to subject to cabinet member decision, we'll be submitting this AMR to the Welsh Government at the end of this year, and then we'll continue to monitor the progress of the LDP as we move forward and report back next year with the figures for 2021 to 2022. So that is the delivery of the AMR members. There's a lot of information within the report. I know a lot of data to absorb and to digest, but we're here now, Chair, to ask any questions or any queries on the data.
Yes, thanks very much, Craig, for that presentation. But to a large extent, we are at the behest of developers, aren't we, as to whether these targets are going to be reached or not. There's very little we can do to force developers actually to come forward and develop the land that they have consents for, and similarly with shop vacancies in the towns. I mean, it's the figures are taken at a moment in time, and a week after you've put the figures together, the whole thing could have changed. So it's a movable feast, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as a council, we don't hold all the levers within the construction industry. I think what we can do is have a proactive LDP which allocates enough land and there's enough opportunity there for developers to come forward, and that's not just residential developments, economic developments as well, as having that economic land there available, having land allocated within a robust plan to allow those opportunities to address those local issues. And what this plan has shown, this existing LDP, is that our 6 of 7 of the strategic sites, they do have planning consent. So we have created that opportunity as a council. We have created that land to come forward, and the last one, Vinegar Hill, is actually in the planning application with us at the moment and looking to take forward to a future planning committee. So I think how we address it as a council is we create that opportunity. We have a robust, detailed LDP with enough land to allocate for these opportunities to come forward. That's how we do it, and then obviously working with developers. I mean, over this plan period, it is worth noting in terms of planning permissions that we have issued 4,378 planning permissions over the plan period to date. So against a 4,500 target, you know, with all the smaller developments, we are doing really well in terms of moving forward.
I've got a number of members who want to come in and ask questions. The first is Richard Roden. Richard, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very, very concerned about the water quality of the River Wye. We haven't had any cygnets born in Monmouth this year, which is very unusual, and Monmouth Angling Society suspended fishing for a while to help conserve stocks. And this is all down to the phosphates issue. I keep seeing that MCC are actively working with other organisations in order to resolve this issue. But I think it's actually an extremely big issue to resolve, and I'm not confident that we will be able to resolve it in the period of the next LDP. And secondly, based on that, how realistic is the housing development trajectory on page 41, I believe, 41 of the AMR in the light of this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roden. Yes, the phosphate issue is a significant issue, and it is affecting our rivers, and it's really upsetting that the rivers have that poor quality at the moment with phosphate levels, and we do need to ensure that we protect that and looks to ways to find solutions to allow development to continue and to allow our council and communities to grow without harming the river quality. I can completely, in terms of environmental issues there, really concern myself about how we move forward. We are sitting in Monmouthshire. This is a national problem. This is a national issue that we need to deal with. So we're not the only council in Wales with this issue, and I am sitting on a board, PAM Wales, with Natural Resources Wales, with Welsh Government, with Welsh Water, to try and find ways and find solutions to ensure that both things can proceed, development and improving the water quality in the rivers. But yes, I don't think it's no mean feat in terms of the challenges in front of us. It is significant. I don't think it's going to be solved overnight. There needs to be a detailed funding programme, I think, in terms of our drainage system, to allow the ability for phosphate stripping in some of our most sustainable settlements, and so put that drainage infrastructure in to deal with the issue. But we also need to look at natural-based solutions as well on a catchment-wide basis. So looking at wetlands and other multifunctional solutions which have multiple benefits in terms of biodiversity and landscape benefit and recreational for us as people as well. So I think it's a massive challenge. It's huge, but it's something that we are working hard with other authorities on, and we'll keep moving forward. But I think there's also need to be investment in our most sustainable settlements. So in the Monmouthshire context, in the north of the county, Abergavenny and Monmouth, I think we certainly need to look at improving that infrastructure, drainage infrastructure, to deal with phosphate stripping.
Could I actually comment as well? Are you working the other side of the border? Because obviously the Wye runs both sides, England and Wales. Are you communicating with the English authorities as well?
Yes, sorry, I should have said that. I am sitting on the Wye Nutrient Management Board, and we're having those discussions and communications with our Monlife colleagues as well. So there is that cross-border discussions being had as well.
Okay, thank you. The second question was with regard to confidence in the trajectory for housing development on page 41. I see the challenge that we face is significant to actually deliver the properties indicated, particularly in the light of the phosphate issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But the trajectory is embraced by existing planning permissions as well. So some of those sites have already got planning consent. The phosphate issue is set in a point of time from the beginning of this year. So if development has got planning consent prior to that, that can continue. The phosphate issue is impacting on development which hasn't got planning consent. So things from a set point of time. So some of the sites which haven't come forward and haven't got planning consent at the moment, they can proceed. And obviously some of those sites are outside of the phosphate area as well. So for instance, again, Vinegar Hill in the south of the county, that wouldn't be affected by this. So we're still confident the trajectory can continue, and those dwellings will come forward based on planning permissions that have been granted already.
Okay, thank you very much, Craig, please.
Thanks, Craig. If I could ask Louise Brown, Councillor Louise Brown, to ask a question. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just asking a question, obviously, about the phosphate issue. Is this a a north of the county issue, or is it north of the M4? I'm not quite sure about that because somebody said it was north of the M4, so it would be helpful if that was clarified. The question obviously with regard to phosphates is, do we know how what percentage the Water Board in Monmouthshire have got of phosphate stripping facilities? And other questions are following on from Councillor Roden, is about the sort of housing trajectory, not only for this plan but proposed for the RLDP, because although the graphs and figures that you presented showed that obviously the level of building at the start of the plan is less than as you go along the plan, still at 3.8, 3,000 houses have been built out of a trajectory over the 10-year plan of 4,500. So obviously that's still the 1,500 shortfall, and that's equivalent over a 10-year period of 300 houses per annum. And obviously the housing trajectory for the RLDP is about 507 for 7,300 and something, and it's sorry, 7,605 I think it was, and for that's 507 per annum, and for 8,366 is more than that per annum. And I just thought, with regard to the challenges that we've got, then, you know, how realistic is this housing trajectory? I mean, this is something that the Welsh Government have responded on, and I think I suppose the other, looking at the report itself, just for my particular area, it mentions about a major development, which I'm quite interested to learn in the footnotes, is classified as 10 houses as and above. And this housing development that's been mentioned in the annual monitoring report is 11 houses, and it's only got outline planning permission at the moment. It hasn't actually got detailed planning permission, and I wondered if that, you know, obviously with an annual monitoring report, whether that's taken into account, you know, because obviously it could be a while before this progresses, and I haven't heard anything further on it. So there's a few questions there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. With regards to your first point, with regards to the phosphates, yes, it affects the river catchment areas, so the river catchment of River Usk and the River Wye. So it doesn't affect all of Monmouthshire, and it isn't directly based on the M4 trajectory, that line across county. It is within the catchment area. So there is, I can send you that information in terms of what areas are impacted. There is a map on our website under the water quality section, which shows where these catchment areas are. So it's any development in that specific spatial area. So the south of the county generally, Chepstow, Sevenside is not within that phosphate area. In terms of phosphate stripping capability in Monmouthshire, we have very limited. The only drainage system which does have phosphate stripping capability is Raglan. So they do have some capacity there to treat phosphates and to ensure that it doesn't harm the water quality. But that is the only drainage system at the moment. We are in those conversations and having those discussions with Welsh Water about improving the infrastructure and our most sustainable settlements in Abergavenny and Monmouth to allow growth and to allow the existing businesses and schools development to increase, because as you can imagine at the moment there are restrictions on what we can do in those areas in terms of development, particularly new build development. Any increase in wastewater is considered to be harmful, so we really need to ensure that we get that drainage infrastructure improved and enhanced to allow existing development to occur, well, notwithstanding any future development as well. In terms of the figures and the trajectory, yes, we are currently short 1,500 dwellings based on the existing plan period, but as I have said, 7 of those sites have been allocated and they are coming forward. And over the next 5 years, working with and speaking to the developers and speaking to what is coming on board, we are confident that that trajectory will continue, and we will get those additional deliveries, and hopefully Vinegar Hill will also get planning consent and can be built out to deliver those homes for people on the ground. And this is part of the issue as we move forward, really, in terms of allocating land. We can see here that when land is allocated, we are able to deliver those homes for people on the ground, and we need a robust LDP as we move forward to deliver those homes. And obviously, members are aware of the Welsh Government letter and the concerns with regards to that level of growth that would be able to achieve. Addressing those local issues and addressing those key objectives that we all want to address moving forward. I think there's a struggle there with regards to the amount of allocations we would need. So moving forward, I think that is up for discussion as we move forward, as we know. In terms of the major house applications, Councillor Brown, yes, 10 dwellings or more would be major, so anything over 10 dwellings would be a major planning application. And the Soil application, we do measure from the time that it gets outline planning consent. So that is when the principle of development is established. So from the outline consent is when we measure, that is when planning consent has been granted. The reserve matters then follows up, reviewing just some of the key details with regards to that scheme.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Councillor Ruth Edwards.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Sorry, I had to leave a lot of the meeting because I had something else going on here locally with the business. So I'm sorry I didn't see all of the presentation and so on, but it has been highlighted about the predominance of poultry farming in Powys. And of course, as we said, the Esk and the Monmouth and the Wye, they're all sort of coming through Monmouthshire, which is a great concern to anybody in that sort of business. And also, when you're talking of building, and we all know when it comes to how many affordable homes we're going to have in a development, and with building costs going up so much, will they still put more and more pressure on us to say, well, we can't do that because of the cost of it? Because I can't see the costs coming down, and that's usually where they sort of have to stick to hit us with it. You know, they can't afford to do what we really want them to do. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. This is a multidisciplinary issue in terms of water quality of our rivers. It is relating to agriculture practices. It is relating to development as well. I think that's why we are working together on a Pan-Wales basis to find a solution to how we move forward. It is really difficult ultimately, but I think we need to find ways to mitigate harm, mitigate runoff. I know there's been changes to agricultural practices recently, which positive and should have an improvement. And again, we need to ensure that we have the right infrastructure and our drainage to deal with this issue. But it is a significant problem, and all we can do is try and move forward and find solutions.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Councillor Maureen Powell.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for the presentation. It was very, very interesting, and what I think is going on. Coming back to this subject of the pollution of the rivers, we're worrying about the farmers doing it, we're worrying about the building the houses, but what I'm concerned about is the fact that they're emptying raw sewage. And as I haven't got the paper with me now, but in one of the papers this week, it's saying how much and how many times raw sewage is being emptied into the rivers, which should be going through our sewage system. And I think that's where some of the problem, a lot of the problem is. I mean, anything coming down from the farms gets diluted as it comes through the ground, and our drainage from housing is monitored. But I think the fact that they're doing this, something wants to be done. They need to build bigger sewerage areas to cope with it all, and be stopped from doing it. I mean, it's just like taking a bucket out of your old loo when you didn't have water running and you had the old bucket type of thing down the garden and just tipping it willy-nilly in the river. I mean, this is what they're doing. They're loosing raw sewage in, and I think that is far more potent and more important. Well, it's all important, but it wants to be attacked, and I wonder what Greg thinks about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I think it'd be amiss of me to comment on drainage going into the river obviously is really upsetting, I think, from my point of view, in terms of that environmental issue. And this is what we need to work with Welsh Water, Natural Resources Wales and other partners to ensure that doesn't happen. But yeah, it's just upsetting, really, isn't it, with regards to that aspect. We need to work together to find solutions. I think that's where we are at the moment in that headspace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Louise Brown, I think you want to come back in again?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Oops, I'm just disappearing on the screen. I think I'm sinking down or something. My question was just about the Crick Road site, which was which gained planning consent, and obviously, but it doesn't seem to be proceeding in any shape or form at the moment. And I just wondered why that was, because obviously there's the new care facility that's going to be there as well. And there was a question, obviously we're dealing with the question of phosphates in the north of the county, but is there also a sort of a water sewage infrastructure issue with regard to the Crick Road site? Because I think it was something that was raised before. I mean, this is obviously not in the north of the county, but in the south of the county. So I just wondered what the reasons for that sort of not progressing actually were, because, you know, there doesn't seem to be, you know, there isn't necessarily a phosphate reason. I mean, there might be a, you know, link up to the main sewage pipes reason, but I'm not quite clear, so it'd be helpful to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Yes, Crick Road in Portsmouth, just outside of Caldecott, is progressing. It has got planning consent, as you say, for care home for residential developments, and I believe a development will start on site quite shortly. There's a number of conditions still for discharge which we're working through, but I've had conversations with developers quite recently, actually, and I think we will see construction start on site shortly, subject to a few elements being agreed and tightened up. I think some of the delays there are contractual between different partners, so I think that is moving forward, and I think we will see development there in the next 6 months.
Thanks, Craig. Councillor Phil Murphy, you've got a question?
I can just give some clarification, Chair. I was told yesterday that it's anticipated the care home will be started by the first 2 weeks of December. They've got to get the slab down, so it's going to happen, certainly as regards the care home, imminently. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Brown, you're back.
Yeah, sorry. Just on the original question, it's good to hear it's progressing, but I was just wondering about was there any water sewage issue, or is that not an issue on that side?
No, in terms of phosphates, there's no drainage issue in that site.
No, I didn't mean phosphates. I meant sort of water sewage infrastructure.
In terms of public foul sewerage, there isn't. No, it's been given planning consent. Welsh Water would have been consulted. I can't remember what the response was, but in terms of planning consent being granted, there isn't a foul drainage issue there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I don't think we've got any further questions, Craig. So on that basis, I think subject to any last-minute intervention, I think we can recommend that the report is now submitted to Welsh Government, so far as this committee is concerned. And thank you very much. You've clearly got some challenges in the next few months.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Right, if we can now proceed then to agenda item number 6, that's the planning annual performance report. That's the scrutiny of the annual report for submission to Welsh Government. And I anticipate that'll be either Craig or Phil Thomas again. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll be presenting this particular one, and we'll field questions between us afterwards. So if I just share my screen.
Sorry, bear with me. Slow, isn't it? Right, can everyone see that? And can you see that slide?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So this is the Planning Services Annual Performance Report, which I'll abbreviate for brevity to APR, and it's looking back at last year's performance. So it's the 7th APR we've had to submit. Normally, it's a mandatory thing for us to submit to Welsh Government by the end of October of each year. It's not this year because of COVID, but we've decided for our own benefit and to assess how we've been doing to undertake an APR and submit it to Welsh Government. We'll also post it on our website and obviously have it translated into Welsh as well. So it looks at performance against nationally set performance indicators and Welsh Government targets. And it looks at our performance against the Welsh average. Now, we're a bit hamstrung by this because the Welsh Government haven't authorised the data unit, the National Data Unit, to assess Welsh performance for all the other authorities and assess it at a national level. So the last figures we've got for a Welsh average performance is 2018-19. So we're having to assess how we did last year, which was entirely affected by COVID, against pre-pandemic figures. But nevertheless, we've done it just to understand how we've been doing over the last year and how resilient our service has been. So the results are considered in the context of the challenges, as it says, opportunities, priorities and resources available to us over the year. And the objective of the report is to reflect on and celebrate good performance, identify areas for improvement and look across Wales to identify areas of best practice that we can learn from or indeed share with others if we've been a part of that. So the APR is divided into sections, as you'll appreciate it, and it reports on the same performance figures across Wales for each local planning authority. So we also look at where our service sits within the council as a whole, corporately, how we're structured, and how we fit in with the corporate priorities. We also look at local pressures, for instance, the phosphate issue that's just been discussed in some detail. We look at customer feedback in terms of complaints and compliments and our overall performance. And it's analysed across five key aspects of planning service delivery, which Welsh Government set out in their planning performance framework. And that includes plan making, efficiency, quality, engagement and enforcement. And within those areas, there are different measures. So, as I've said before, like last year, production of the APR for submission to Welsh Government is not mandatory due to the COVID pandemic. Assume that the assumption is, I think, from Welsh Government that the performance will have dipped because of COVID and the challenges we've all have had. But anyway, there's no requirement for it, but we've provided one. We haven't assessed the plan making element because we feel that's been adequately covered in the annual monitoring report, which you've just had the presentation on. So in terms of what we said we do in the previous annual performance report, 2019-20, there were 4 actions. And in terms of the actions, I'll go through them individually now briefly. Action 1 was to digitise information in relation to tree information, woodland information we keep, to help customers to self-serve and reduce the significant demand we have on the council's tree officer, who's part-time, the daily duty officer and support staff. So what happens very often, we get a call about a TPO or perhaps a neighbour doing works to trees in the neighbouring garden, and people want to know whether there's an issue that we can intervene in because the tree may be TPO'd. So we'd like to get that all accurately recorded and digitised and put on Mon maps and then publicly available so that people can self-serve and have less recourse then to ring us up and ask for help on that in that respect. That's a work in progress. It does involve quite a lot of resurvey work. Some of the TPOs go back to the 70s and maybe before that, so they need to be reassessed to see that they're fit for purpose now. There's an element of work that we're going to have to bear up and take into this current year and possibly next year now. Bear in mind the resources and the impact of COVID have had on us actually achieving that. There's also work to do with the GIS team, the council GIS team as well. Action 2 was to upgrade the planning services back office systems, which would provide more resilience and better GDPR compliance, and that has been done. So that action was achieved, and that does make the system more resilient. It would have been de-supported if we hadn't done that, and it's a better system for customers and users. Action 3 was to review and make positive change to the planning services enforcement function. There were concerns that it hadn't been performing that quickly or flexibly in previous years. We have made improvements over the last 2 years, but it is a work in progress, and inevitably because of COVID, even though the service measures for that particular area of our service enforcement, even though they declined on the previous year, they're still fair, but we've kept it. You'll see we'll have kept it on as an action in the coming year for the current reporting period, because we want to improve it. Action 4 was to continue to review the collaboration arrangement we have in providing a heritage service with neighbouring authorities at Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent, and to develop a building at risk strategy to manage and prioritise interventions in terms of key buildings that are at risk throughout the authority. Again, that's a work in progress. COVID hit the heritage team quite significantly in terms of staff resources, and we haven't started that BAR at present. So that's something we're going to have to prioritise into the coming reporting period. So in terms of how we did over 2021, that obviously is set out in the report in section 6 in Appendix A. But in terms of summarising some headline figures, so the proportion of major applications we determined within 8 weeks or agreed timescales, it remained healthy at 78%. It did dip from the previous year, which was 85%, but it was still a good performance. It was a green indicator because we use a traffic light system for these measures. And it was well above the Welsh Government target of 60% for major applications. The proportion of all applications determined within 8 weeks or agreed timescales remained high at 91%. It's the same as the previous year, which was largely unaffected by the pandemic. And it was better than the last comparable Welsh average performance in 2018-19, which was 88%. Again, pre-pandemic. The proportion of applications we approved remained high at 97%, the same as the previous year. And of those applications that have gone through our pre-application advice service and followed our advice, 100% were approved. And there's a link between that pre-application advice service and our ability to approve a high proportion of planning applications. The pre-application advice service is there to weed out non-starters, ones that would be contrary to policy, you know, for instance, homes in the open countryside, etc., which aren't for a rural enterprise worker, those sort of non-starters. So that means we can keep then our application approval rate at a high proportion. And this is the sort of a really positive bit of news. We won all 10 appeals against their decisions. Some of those would have been by planning committee as well. So that's a really encouraging performance. It's rare that you'll win 100% of appeals, but we did in that particular year. And I think it's an indication that the Welsh Government stroke PINS, Planning Inspectorate, are now placing placemaking high on the agenda. It's always something that as an authority we placed and made a priority of, but we think that that's fallen into place now. We're in step now with the Planning Inspectorate, who who are not looking at proposals as if are they good enough, but are they making a positive contribution to the street scene, etc. And we dealt with a large number of building consent applications, and 88% of those were determined within agreed timescales. Again, an improvement on the previous year. And the enforcement performance remained resilient despite the constraints of the pandemic and a temporary reduction in staff resource over that period. So this is the traffic light system. It's what draws people really to the APR. It's the performance framework measure that Welsh Government have set up, and there are 13 measures. 12 are actually given targets, and of the 12, 8 of ours were measured as good. That's green in terms of the traffic light system, and 4 were fair, which is the amber, and there were no reds, which is a positive thing. I'll briefly run through those. As I've said, majors was at 78%. It did dip a little bit from the previous year of 85, but it's still good. And inevitably the pandemic would have had some level of impact on our performance in terms of, you know, the lockdown when we weren't visiting sites and were working from home. There were pressures in terms of COVID isolation cases, children having to isolate at home, not going to school, homeschooling impacting on parents who were also trying to work 7 hours, 24 a day. So inevitably, some things did take a little dip. Having said that, we did determine 91% within the required time periods, which is remarkable, really, given the constraints we faced. Where that's perhaps borne out, the pressures on staff working from home and homeschooling, etc., and caring, the average time taken to determine all applications in days did increase from 70 pre-pandemic, or largely pre-pandemic, to 92 days. So I think that was an indication of the pressure and the longer time it's taken to turn around planning applications. That's the listed building one below. That you can see there was a healthy turnaround of those with 88% within agreed time periods. And in terms of the quality of decision making, they measure the percentage of member-made decisions against officer advice. That crept up slightly from the previous year, but if you put that into context, there were only 2 decisions out of 35 made at committee, and members aren't slavishly bound to accept recommendations. There can be a healthy debate, and sometimes they won't agree with us. That's all part of the democratic process. I think it's only worrying if that figure sort of spirals up a bit towards the red figure. 2 out of 35 is perfectly acceptable, and those schemes were both in Llanfoist, actually, in Councillor Howard's ward. One was for a close care mini village near behind McDonald's on the Westgate Business Park, where members felt it was a better fit given the surrounding developments than an employment use, which was what the allocation was. And the other one was for the Greenfield development, which was for a large sort of L-shaped over 55 accommodation over 2/3 floors, which members and we await the appeal decision on that, which will interestingly be affected by the phosphate issue now since that decision. That's the very glowing appeals dismissed measure. And then in terms of application for cost, there were none upheld in the reporting period, which is obviously our target. Then these are engagement measures of whether we allow members of the public to address planning committee. Yes, we've been doing that for a long time now, so that's obviously green. Does the local planning authority have an officer on duty? Yes, we do. We have a daily duty officer. It is time consuming, but it is really useful. And it's a great way of signposting people to information and to guide them in terms of the application process and how to comment. Does the website have an online register of planning applications which members of the public can access, track their progress? And as I'm sure you've all used it, then that answer is yes. And then those are the two enforcement measures which have declined slightly. They're still fair, but we recognise that the enforcement team was under significant pressure. There was secondment in the team to work in the grants, COVID grant team. So bearing in mind there's only 3 officers there, so they were down by a third already because of the secondment. And then there was also bereavement, and bereavement which led to one member of staff being off for a while. So it's not that needs to be seen in the context of the pressures that small team were under, and the the rise to the challenge that the remaining officers gave to that particular performance, and rise to the challenge. So where we did improve, the average time to determine major applications in days reduced from 296 to 248, and that would have been less but for one application which we negotiated on at the request of the developer, and did in fact refuse it, and that's again that's gone to appeal, I think, Craig, isn't it? I think it's gone, yeah. And then in terms of the other areas we improved at, the percentage of listed building applications, as said, improved from 84 to 88%. And the I keep blowing the trumpet of the appeals, don't I? From 86, it was already good before, it was 86 to 100%. So in terms of key activity over the period, I won't go through all of this, but as you know, work continued on the replacement LDP. We upgraded the IDOC's uniform system to provide better resilience and functionality. We worked through the new phosphate guidance from NRW and applied it to new applications in the River Wye and us catchment areas. And as Craig has said, there are no easy solutions. We'll continue to work with a wide range of agencies and other planning authorities who are facing the same issue to find suitable solutions, sustainable solutions to this really significant environmental problem. We filled staff vacancies where colleagues have gone on to promotions with other authorities. We secured detailed planning applications for major developments at Llanfoist for the close care village, thanks to the members who approved it contrary to our advice. We've approved the affordable housing element of the LDP allocation at Maybe Bridge, and there was also an approval for a major proposal to expand the brewing function at Mega Brewery, which is a major employer in the south of the county. And close to Councillor Murphy's heart, we're working with the Building Preservation Trust to secure the restoration of a key listed building in this instance, Kaya Went. In terms of going forward, COVID has, as you inevitably had, hampered our abilities to cross off, if you like, and work through the previous actions from the previous year. So some of those are repeated. Action 1 is really something we do want to do and prioritise. It's to digitise the tree information to help people to self-serve. Action 2 is a new action that stems from the Section 106 working group, which meets quarterly. But we want to promote the positive aspects of new development to our communities by publicising the contribution of what it is essential community infrastructure provided under planning agreements attached to the planning permissions for new major predominantly housing developments. So rather than the public be concerned about the pressures that a new housing development is having on infrastructure, existing infrastructure, we want to positively promote the good things that come from new development in terms of open space, affordable housing, green travel inputs, all those good things that come out of it. And then we're going to promote those in some interesting way that we can then put on our website and through social media to perhaps balance up the argument about new development and the benefits it can portray. Action 3 is to continue making positive change to the planning services enforcement function, and hopefully we'll have a cleaner slate as we I say emerge out of COVID. We're not we're slowly emerging out of COVID. It's still with us, but we'll hopefully have a year where it's been better resourced and we can measure it more, measure its resilience properly and more realistically post-COVID. And then Action 4 is to develop that buildings at risk strategy that I mentioned before, as it's a really important issue. Monmouthshire has a rich heritage of built heritage, and we need to prioritise any particular key buildings and decide which ones are ones we want to focus on in terms of restoring them. And then Action 5 is post-COVID, because that end-to-end measure went up to 92 days from 70 days the previous year. We are going to conduct a review of the application process to consider how to improve average time to determine planning applications, and that's something we'll do in the new year, as officers are still working through a bit of a backlog post-COVID. But we're going to see how we can improve and make sure people are working consistently and try and cut out any waste which is coming into our processes. So in terms of that last piece, that's the value of planning tool. We like to put this in at the end, as it does show that via the allocation of land, the granting of planning permissions, and various other factors, the Section 106 money we lever into the local communities, there would have been 87.3 million raised in terms of the local community, the local economy, via the actions of the planning service. So that's a hefty figure, and it's something to try and monetize really the role that planning plays in helping its local community to face current challenges. So yeah, thank you, Chair. That's my presentation over. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil, for that. I find it very interesting. I've got a question. You might think it's a bit pedantic, but in paragraph 6.1 on page 5, we see the proportion of major applications determined within 8 weeks, that's 56 days, at a healthy 78%. But then when we go on to paragraph 6.7 on page 8, you see that the average time to determine planning applications has increased to 92 days. So is it 56 or 92? Sorry, I'm just trying to find out where the end-to-end time is definitely 92 days for all applications. Right. Because in paragraph 6.1 it says the proportion of major applications determined within 8 weeks or agreed timescales is a healthy 78%. So that's 56 days. Are we talking about slightly different things?
78%. No. Yeah, that's agreed timescales as well. So that could be over the 56 days. Right. So once it gets to 8 weeks, we then agree an extension of time with the developer. So okay. that could be. I mean, the application could have taken a year and a half to determine. As long as the applicant is happy, yes, and is still negotiating with us, or is awaiting an important element like a committee report to happen, then they will agree an extension of time or not. They don't have to agree it. Okay, I understand that now. I just wanted to... Okay, yeah. Okay. It shows I read the report. Very good, very good. Do any members have any questions here? Not see any hands waving up. Perhaps they're completely satisfied with your report. I doubt that. Richard Roden.
Chair, thank you. I'm quite interested in the enforcement side. You have 297 complaints and 14 actions, and it seems we get an inordinate amount of complaints with very few actions. Is there something else taking place in the middle between the the action and the actual complaint? And is there a possibility of looking at educating the complainants so that they make less complaints? Just curious about volume. How much work does this volume of complaints entail?
Well, it is a lot of work. It does vary from complaint to complaint. Obviously, you can have something which is creating angst to a large number of people in the community, and then others which are really normally a neighbour dispute. So there's only one neighbour concerned, say, about a fence being erected by the neighbour, which is 2.1 metres high instead of 2 metres, which is permitted development. So it does vary from scale to scale. They're all investigated. Some are closed quite quickly because there could be no breach, and others take months and months and months to sort out because you're then negotiating with the if I call them transgressor, that's probably the person who's carried out the development. So often unwittingly, they didn't realise they needed permission. Then you may be negotiating a retrospective application to be determined, and then that comes into the planning application process, and then there's consultation on it, etc., etc. Others, you're taking more vigorous enforcement action against. If there's no prospect of granting planning permission, you would more immediately serve an enforcement notice. In terms of training, we've done training in the past with community councils, because obviously being the mouthpiece of the community, we try and educate the community councils to understand that planning can't solve everything, and there's a process to go through. I think that presumably there's an election next year, so there will be a need to update the training for the new cohort of councillors. So we can do that ourselves or via help with planning aid, who I think ran the course last time we did it during the last cycle of elections. So, but we're always happy to work with the community to help them understand the limits of what we can do and when it's appropriate to complain, if you like, about it. But and that's where the community councils are a good conduit then to help the community understand who they need to speak to in terms of speaking to us, and how we can help them.
Okay,
So,
thanks very much for the explanation, Phil. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phil, for that. Councillor Brian Strong.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Phil, for the presentation. It's just you were talking about actions for 21-22 buildings at risk. In Usk, we've got 2 buildings which are at risk. You probably know about them. The Priory Gatehouse, which is in a quite poor state. At the back of that of the Priory, there is an old stable block which over the years has more or less disappeared. I think the roof's gone and the walls are almost tumbling down. You do know about that, and if you could see what you can do about that, because it's something, the Priory Gatehouse, in fact, when it's right next to the church, and recently the funerals that have taken place there, there's fencing around it, and it's caused a lot of distress to some of the mourners there, and it does need really urgent attention. And the other one is the old White House, the old council building next to the King's Head in Usk. They've recently repainted it and I think repaired the roof to a certain extent, but again, the interior hasn't been touched at all. It's up for sale now, and again, if you could keep an eye on that, I'd be really grateful. Okay, thank you.
By all means, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Phil. Can't see any further raised hands. Any further questions from members here? No. Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say if members didn't have any further questions in terms of the applications and the team themselves. Just wanted to say thank you really in terms of this was a very difficult year in terms of the pandemic. As you can see from the report, the number of applications didn't wane, and they had significant pressures on them, and they have really sort of done extremely well really in terms of delivering the number of applications they have and determined, 91% approved. So it's really significant. I just wanted to say that for myself really as head of service, that just really thank you very much for the work they put in over the last year, and just keep the good work up and keep moving forward in that respect.
Thanks very much. If I could just mention or ask a question. So far as the digital tree project is concerned, digitising the TPOs, what sort of timescale do you think would be in hand for that?
Well, we're just literally looking at this at the moment, Chair, in terms of how we move forward with this piece of work. We're working with the existing tree officer to see what that entails, how much resource that's going to need to be done. But there is a significant amount of information. I think that there's a lot that needs to be digitised and put onto the system to allow people to self-serve. So I think we're looking to commence it in the new year, but how long that's going to take, I think it's going to be, that's still up for discussion. I think it's going to be quite a number of months before we're there, but it's certainly a key piece of work we need to do.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the report, Phil and Craig. Clearly, planning over the last year or more has been somewhat traumatic. Let's use that word, and I think you've all done an excellent job. So thanks very much for that report, and I think the recommendation is that this report goes to the Welsh Government for them to rubber stamp. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, if we can then proceed now to the further item on the agenda, that is to look at the Council and Cabinet Work Planner, and that's for information. You can all see lots of interesting matters that are coming up before us. If any members have any observations, say now. Otherwise, if we can confirm the one matter I think I should highlight is, of course, there's a special meeting on the 8th of November. That's where we're going to be inviting interested parties and members of the public to come and speak to our committee on the replacement local development plan. So make a note in your diary for that, please. And then if we can then proceed to agenda item number 9, that's to confirm the following minutes that the Economy and Development Select Committee of the 7th of September 2021 and the Special Economy and Development Select Committee of the 16th of September 2021. If I can ask somebody to propose and second those. If you haven't all gone home.
Move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. So I think we've now reached the end of that meeting. Thank you very much for everybody for attending. It's nice to have a quorate meeting, and thank you, officers, for your presentations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully we'll get mince pies soon.
Officers.
Thanks.
Next meeting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Great.